crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with host David Lamb and the attorneys of Hollis Wright.
Good evening and welcome in to the attorneys. We really appreciate you being with us tonight. Got an incredible guest with us tonight. You're really going to enjoy this. Have no doubt about that. Before we jump into that, I want to remind you of how you can be a part of the show, because it's always better the more you are involved. At the bottom of your screen, ways you can call, text, email, whatever is most convenient for you. We'd love for you to do so. Also, Hollis Wright makes available attorneys from the firm who are standing by right now. It's a live, off-air, and confidential conversation, an opportunity that's yours for the taking. So take advantage of that throughout the program at any point tonight if maybe you would like some free and off-air confidential legal advice. Leading our conversation, he's the managing partner of Hollis Wright. Josh Wright, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you too. How you doing?
Doing well. You?
Great. You look good.
So do you.
Everything going well this week?
It's all going good. How about you?
You know, David, your intro to the show is perfect because we're super lucky. It's not every day we get elected officials on the show, but we're lucky enough to have the Jefferson County District Attorney Danny Carr on tonight to talk a little bit about kind of the DA, what role the DA plays in our criminal system, and kind of a little bit of his history. So first of all, Danny, nice to see you, and thank you so much for being on. We really appreciate it.
Josh, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be on.
Hey, let's start with this, because I don't think necessarily the entire viewing audience understands kind of the role of the DA. Let's talk a little bit about that, and then I want to talk a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to this spot to be our elected official in Jefferson County.
Yes, let me first say that the DA plays an important role, important function. The calling card for the DA, the primary function is to hold people accountable for the criminal acts that they commit within our county. However, I look at it in a broader sense. Also, people use the term that the DA's job is to make sure justice is served. But justice flows through various forms. Justice is not necessarily that someone goes to jail. Justice can also be that someone gets help for a crime that they committed that may be nonviolent. Justice sometimes means that you do the right thing in circumstances that may not be as popular based on a given set of facts in the law. So the DA plays a huge role in the criminal justice system. And I often say that, I sum it up in one way, that the DA's job is to make sure that the guilty doesn't go free, but also that the innocent doesn't suffer. Yeah. And that's really what you do. So it's really a bifurcated role.
That's what I learned in law school too. That's kind of the reason we have such a high standard of care on the criminal side, or burden of proof rather, on the criminal side. How did you get to this spot? Because it is not easy to become the elected DA in Jefferson County. I know that there is politics involved. Yeah. There's a track record and a history. Kind of tell us a little bit about how you got here, because it's quite an accomplishment.
You know, I'm born and raised in Birmingham, number one. Number two, right out of law school, I decided that I wanted to make a difference from the inside. And oftentimes, when you graduate from law school, people hear about people want to go to firms and do other things, which are great jobs as well. But I decided to take an unusual route, the unorthodox route. And I decided I wanted to be at the DA's office. So I was hired under David Barber, who was a longtime DA. And I served under his leadership for several years. After that, Brandon Falls became the district attorney, and I served with Brandon for several years as well. And then ultimately, I was appointed district attorney, and fortunately, I ran after being appointed. And 20 years later, I'm the elected district attorney.
Tell us, and as I recall, do you have opposition in the upcoming election?
I do not. Thank God I do not have opposition in this upcoming election. I was slated to be on the ballot this time. I do not have opposition, so I'll have a 6-year term to continue the job as DA.
Well, congratulations. We're not going to have any gray hair then in the next several years, right?
I tell you, probably not from running for office, but probably from the position. Yes, I still have a little gray hair.
And tell us, Danny, just a little bit about how is the district attorney structured? I know it's not just you. You've got an entire staff and a group of assistant district attorneys. Kind of explain how that works.
Yeah, it's the largest DA's office in the state. You have several elected DAs throughout the state of Alabama in various different jurisdictions, but in Jefferson County, it's the largest office. We have about 44 assistants, along with the chief deputy, and then myself. And what we do, we assign the DAs to several courts, whether it's circuit court, whether it's district court for the preliminary hearings. We also obviously have a grand jury that we hold once a month. I think we're the only office in the state that have grand jury once a month, but that's because of the volume of cases in this county. And then we also have a charging division where we determine whether a person should be charged, what they should be charged with, and make recommendations. And also we have a juvenile side as well, where we have DAs assigned to our family court division as well over on 122nd Court North.
You know, it's interesting, David, because when you look at the district attorney, in some counties, it may just be a district attorney and one assistant district attorney. Jefferson County, with the volume of things going on, you know, we've got an entire department. It's like a separate law firm, all of itself, no different than you see across our city.
I'm curious, we were talking before we started about the ring on your finger. Did you say your dad or grandfather?
My grandfather.
So you seem to be a fellow who leads with head as well as heart and legacy.
Absolutely. That's
important to you.
Yes.
You said you wanted to work from the inside out. Where do you think that desire, kind of that motivation came from to you? Who's the inspiration, I guess you could say, for that?
Yeah, you know, my grandfather, who, you know, I tell people sometimes, you know, you're fortunate enough as a man like me to come from the Inslee area, which is a rough side of town. Inslee area, single parent home, and oftentimes people will say, man, how did you make it out of there to become the district attorney?
Right.
Well, you know, I was fortunate enough to have a grandfather. I had a strong grandmother and mother as well, who was the principal at Winona. My grandfather, who's recently passed about 7 months ago, there's a ring that said DC, and when he became ill, I moved in with him, stayed with him, and he provided me this ring about 4 weeks before he passed, and it stands for Daniel Carr Sr.
Right.
And of course, I'm Danny Carr, and he gave me this ring. So for me, it's inspirational. Whenever I have a tough times or something, it motivates me to always think about doing the right thing and understanding that oftentimes my job is to do what's right at all times, and if you do what's right, then the right result will occur. So it's just a motivating factor for me. Right. And I always aim to make him proud and make my family proud.
I'm sure he is.
Hopefully he's looking down on me and saying, son, you know, keep doing the right thing.
Well, I'm sure he is. And having a principal in your household growing up, that'll keep you doing the right thing, right? I heard that. That was the first thing I thought. I was like, whoa.
Hey,
all right.
No excuses.
Yeah, that's
no
exactly
excuses.
Right.
Your circumstances doesn't dictate your future. You dictate them. So.
What is, talk to us a little bit about the kind of the volume of cases in the district attorney's office. I know it's got to be significant at certain times throughout the year. I mean, how do you guys manage that? I know you got a staff, but.
I tell you, you know, we handle about 10,000 felonies a year, along with about 25,000 misdemeanor cases a year, with 45 lawyers. You think about that for a minute. Yeah. We have a grand jury once a month. In that grand jury process, it lasts for a week. And we do roughly about 275 cases in a week on our grand jury as well. So it's a robust process. We have a great group of people in that office. We have some experienced prosecutors. And we handle everything from dogs running in the neighborhood to capital murder. Okay. So on any given day, you can be in court on a misdemeanor in district court, and then the next week you could be trying a homicide.
And so what I'd like to do, I know we're getting ready to go to break. We're after the break. Let's break that down just a little bit. I want to talk also a little bit about kind of the funding mechanism for the district attorney's office and whether they receive grants for certain things and how that plays in. We'll talk about that too.
All right, perfect time for us to step aside. Stay tuned, more of the attorneys coming right up. Stay with us.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
The attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show 8 years ago, my hope was we would be able to do what we do best, which is to help people answer real-world legal-related issues they have in their life.
People oftentimes are confronting various legal issues and problems in their lives that range across the gamut of legal practice areas. Bankruptcy, criminal law, family law, just to name a few. And to be able to have a 30-minute platform or format to where we can just cover various legal topics once a week, that's obviously the primary focus of the show.
That we would be able to use the resources of the many lawyers we have at this law firm to create a plan that had a lasting impact that also gave back to the community at the same time. And I think we've done just that with the attorneys.
Welcome back into the Attorneys Forum. Before we get back to our conversation, just a reminder, attorneys from Hollis Wright, they are standing by even as we speak and all throughout the program tonight. That's a free, off-air, and confidential conversation. It is yours for the asking, so take advantage of that opportunity all throughout the program tonight. Josh?
All right, let's talk a little bit about the District Attorney's Office and how it's funded, because I know that there probably are some state funds and then some grants that help you guys run various departments. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes, our office is a state office. A lot of people don't know that because we're housed in the county courthouse, but our office is a state office. Most of the employees are state employees. So our money comes from the general fund, state budget, and all the various DA's office kind of split that money. But at the same time, we're fortunate enough to have a county commission here locally that subsidize some of the money for the DA positions and provide some county positions as well, support staff positions, and that truly help us operate. But some of our funding also comes through fines and fees and court costs. And we hope to ultimately eliminate that in the future, but right now that's how we operate. But again, we're fortunate enough to have our state reps in the Senate in Montgomery funds us, and also our county commission helps as well. And we have received some grants for various things, things that we think are important. You know, oftentimes people look at the DA's office as an office where you just prosecute people, you get a verdict, and then you go home. For me, we want to tackle some other issues through our grant process. For instance, we have a domestic violence grant that we received, and domestic violence was one of the things that was close to me in my heart, and I wanted to tackle that issue. What we've learned, even through our domestic violence unit that we've started, is that in 2019, 58% of homicide offenders had some kind of history of domestic violence. In 2020, that number was at 53% of homicide offenders had some type of domestic violence in their background. So we know there's a direct correlation between domestic violence and homicide. So we want to tackle that issue and make better cases, train law enforcement how to respond to domestic violence situations better, so we can make sure that we're holistically looking at domestic violence cases as well.
You know, it's interesting that Danny mentions that, because really what I'm hearing is that part of the district attorney's role is to enforce the law, but there's also a compassion side to that is necessary to recognize that certain people are predisposed or have the potential to be predisposed based on things they went through in their background.
Absolutely.
And they're trying to make sure that they can limit that in the future, which I think is a really noble calling on behalf of the district attorney's office.
It seems like, especially in election years, you often hear, you know, tough on crime and all of that sort of thing. But it sounds like you believe it's possible to be tough on crime, yet also to be smart, creative, and maybe even progressive in the way you attack some of those systematic issues.
Absolutely. I think you have to, and I think that's the only route we can take. I tell people all the time, if you want to fight crime, the way you fight crime, you can't arrest your way out of it. You can't prosecute your way out of it. You have to change the trajectory of people's lives as well. And we're doing that even through our second chance job fair that we will hold. We've had 5 now, and we've seen great results. And one of the things that we've done, the first one we did several years ago, we had 585 job seekers show up at the Boutwell Auditorium. and we placed 157 jobs that day with livable wages.
And these are all individuals who had been incarcerated?
All people that have been incarcerated are returning citizens that are coming back.
Right.
And one of the things we wanted to do was allow those individuals to change the trajectory of their lives. They'll become our credible messengers within the community, and hopefully they'll also let young people know that that's not the route that they want to take.
Right.
So we're looking at this holistically. We're going to prosecute people who deserve to be prosecuted. But at the same time, we're going to try to be community-oriented as well and do things that are not typical for a DA's office as well in efforts to try to make sure that our communities are safer, either through holding people accountable, but at the same time understanding that the reality is some people just need a hand up. And if we can use our platform in an unorthodox manner to help people, we're going to do that as well.
So there's been a movement over the last decade about how we incarcerate our criminals, and that there's a movement of nonviolent offenders should be treated, at least from an incarceration perspective, a little different than violent offenders.
Right.
Do you have to navigate through that politically, and how does that work? And I know that's not an easy question, but it's a question you get as the DA, I'm sure, a lot.
Absolutely, we get that question a lot. We have diversion courts here, number one. Some areas and some jurisdictions, some counties doesn't. We've been fortunate enough to have that. You know, we have a mental health court here, which is a huge piece, and we understand that mental health plays a role in society. Money has been taken away through the general fund from mental health over the years, and we're seeing the results of it. But we have a mental health court here ran by Judge Stephen Wallace. Okay. We have a veterans court to help veterans as well, ran by Judge Michael Streety. We have a drug court ran by Judge Maria Fortune. We have a theft court that's here, that's ran by the variety of judges. But one of the things that we've looked at is sometime, and I talked about justice earlier, justice in some cases is incarceration. Yeah. Justice in some cases also is where you spend the rest of your life in prison. But we understand too, there are things like addiction. And if you put a lot of nonviolent individuals in prison, then what that does is allow the violent individuals to come up for parole quicker because of prison overcrowding. So you have to kind of figure out who are the individuals that deserve to be in prison based on a given set of facts and based on their resume and their history, and who are the individuals that can come back out in society with a little help, with a little motivation, and do what's right and become productive members of society. And we juggle that every day. My office, along with the judges, all the time.
Balance is obviously a super important key in the district attorney's office.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But let's step aside. We're going to go ahead and step aside our the second and final break of the evening. As we do so, a reminder: if wherever you are on social media, Hollis Wright is there also. So whatever your favorite platform is, if you'll just search Hollis Wright, you'll find him there. It's really an awesome place, educational, informational resource for you right there on social media. So we'd love for you to subscribe there and follow us as well. Stay tuned. One final segment of The Attorneys coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright. As with any industry, it's important in the legal world to hire an attorney that is knowledgeable and has a track record of success. But with so many attorneys out there and so many different types of cases, how does someone decide the right lawyer to hire? In this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, what should I consider in hiring an attorney? In-state versus out-of-state, big firm or little firm, recommendations from friends or family, the internet, the phone book, or TV. With so many choices and so much information, it can be an overwhelming task trying to make the right decision. To complicate things, choosing a lawyer is an important and sometimes life-affecting decision and should not be taken lightly. So how do you select an attorney? First, do your research. Look the firm up on the internet. Learn about the cases they handle and the results they get. Second, find out what clients are saying about the firm. Many websites provide client testimonials or have a star ranking system. Use those to your advantage. And finally, talk with a lawyer from their office and ask them questions. Questions about the volume of cases they handle. Do they return phone calls? Are you just a number or a client that gets the attention you deserve? Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys right here on WVTM 13.
Welcome back into the Attorneys. This is our final segment, so about 7 minutes remaining in the program tonight. So if you want to take advantage of the opportunity to speak with attorneys from Hollis Wright, you have about 7 minutes remaining to do so. Our guest tonight, Jefferson County District Attorney Danny Carr, really enjoying this conversation. It seems like every business, every entity has been affected in some way by COVID. How did that affect your office? And do you believe, in terms of, since you're the man at the top and you're tasked with running it as effectively and efficiently and administratively as possible, are there things that you learned from COVID that you probably will not go back to in terms of how you run your office?
Yes, I can tell you one of the main things we learned was that brick and mortar was not as important as we thought. Right. In other words, that you can do things virtually and still get the job done. We operated daily for years, pre-COVID, with at least 115 people in the office a day. When COVID hit, we actually went down to about 10.
Oh, wow.
And was still able to operate. And what we did, we had shifts of teams that would come each day to do the task. And we had people virtually at home to also be available. But what we also did, I thought that was important, was that our screening or charging division, where officers would come in the office every day and bring their files and talk to the DAs in person, we created a pipeline where the officers can email a police portal, what we call it, where they can email their reports in, and the DA can look at it, and then they can talk over the phone and make charging decisions virtually, which then, again, created a space where there was not as many people in the office, less in-person contact to keep people in the office safe, but at the same time, keep justice flowing through the courthouse. So we creatively went from 114 people, believe it or not, to 10. But we still, I mean, it was a huge lift.
And we've heard these stories in every different facet of the legal world, from the way that we conduct depositions and travel today to how they were doing it internally. You know, I mean, like, COVID, we adjusted as lawyers and overcame.
But I would say both of you are really good leaders. The way you led Hollis Wright and you led the DA's office, I think it took some creative leadership, but whenever it showed up on that day, you know, some folks just capitulated and threw their hands up and we're out, you know, but that kind of says something to both of your creativity and creative leadership, which I think you got to have today.
Well, the big difference between what we did at Hollis Wright and what many people in business did is he's got constitutional considerations for criminals that have to have their day in court, have to have their opportunity to be heard. And so there is a complicated side to the constitutional component. Hey, let's talk, when we're talking about the Constitution, let's talk just for a second about kind of the grand jury process, because we actually get a lot of questions about that. Hey, you know, there's allegedly a grand jury meeting. What impact could that have on my case? And of course, we don't do criminal work, but we get them to those that do criminal defense often. Can you just explain in general terms kind of the grand jury process? Because it's a little complicated.
It's number one, is something called the Grand Jury Secrecy Act. And the Grand Jury Secrecy Act mandates that grand jury proceedings are secret. That's the law. And so if you run afoul of that, then there may be criminal charges levied against you as the DA or someone in the office. But for grand jury purposes, we have 18 citizens that are randomly called. They come to a room, they hear cases, they hear evidence from a detective, and they have the opportunity, which is different from a petite jury when there's a trial going on, to ask questions. They have the opportunity to investigate, ask the tough questions, and make a determination whether or not probable cause exists for that case to continue on so a trial can be had. And the one major difference is, beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest standard. That's when we're talking about a jury trial. In grand jury, we're talking about probable cause. probable cause only, and they make those determinations again. But that information is secret by law, based on the Constitution, based on our statutes, and that's why, therefore, the public can't be.
And the grand jury does not. The grand jury does not decide someone's fate. They simply determine if there's sufficient evidence to move forward.
No one can be tried in the state of Alabama for any felony unless they've been indicted by a grand jury.
And that's a question we get a lot, which is I'm being considered by the grand jury, and I'm afraid they're going to secretly convict me. And that's just not the way the process works.
No.
There's a reason why it's secretive. It's to protect those citizens who have an opportunity to ask questions to determine if there's sufficient evidence to move forward.
Absolutely.
But it's a process that gets a lot of consideration and a lot of questions come up.
And let me also just say quickly also, you're not required to transcribe grand jury proceedings, but we transcribe every case. There's a transcript about what's said in there on every case, because again, we want to make sure that we're as transparent as possible.
Yep. That's good. Less than 2 minutes remaining. I want to give both of you just the opportunity for a final thought. And Mr. DA, if you would, you go first. Just a final thought for our viewers.
Well, I'd like your viewers to know, obviously, that we're making sure that we do all we can to hold people accountable, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're part of the community as well. And so what we want to do is continue to do things like be in the schools, make sure we talk to kids about the ramifications of their actions, make sure that we do all we can, not only to help the kids as far as speaking with them, but also create programs to help families as well, because you can't help the kid unless you help the families.
Right.
We want to deal with our pipeline to prison, what we're doing through our Helping Families initiative, which I think is very important, right from the DA's office. We want to continue to mentor young kids, which we're doing through the DA's office, through our DA's League of Gentlemen. So we're doing things that are super unorthodox, things that go above and beyond what some people would say the call to do of the district attorney. But I do believe that if you're going to be a leader, then you have to make sure that you be involved in the community as well and be accessible.
You know, and David, what I would say is, you know, as a citizen of Jefferson County, we want to have a district attorney that has the ability to have an iron fist when necessary, but also has a compassionate heart that is able to find creative ways to make sure we limit crime in our community. It's no mistake that District Attorney Carr, from his upbringing, became a district attorney.
Yeah.
There's no mistake there. You can tell from his history. So, DA Carr, thank you for being here with us. We really appreciate you being here.
I also know why he has no opposition. I would not want to run against him.
I'm with you. I'm with you
Forget
there.
that.
Thank you.
Thanks to both of you for being with us, and thank you, as always. Really appreciate your time tonight. We always are grateful for you and the time you spend with us. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time right here on The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.